The next panel we have will be the Parksburg Borough, Jack Assetto, Parksburg Business Association member, and James Thomas, the borough manager. I know there's a little dinge in the back, but if you want to go ahead and start, I'm sure. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing us to testify today on behalf of the borough of Parksburg. Parksburg, as we know it today, is a diverse community comprised of about 3,500 residents. As a settled community dating back to the 1700s, our town has seen the ups and downs of modern times. In the pre-Depression area, we had a thriving ironworks that supplied boiler tubes to the railroad. Upon their demise during the Depression, most of the local residents left to seek work in other communities. In more recent poor economic times, we've seen massive foreclosures in the borough, with many houses falling into blighted conditions, with some becoming completely abandoned. Following the foreclosure process, many banks sold these homes off to companies and individuals, mostly from out of the area, who would turn them into rental units. These rental units comprise over 38% of individual borough residences, an extremely high number. That is more than 1/3 of the total number of residential dwellings in Parksburg. For the most part, these rental units are owned by absentee landlords who only care about the monthly rent check. They rarely see their properties, yet alone keep them in a repaired state. On the other hand, we have local landlords who pride themselves on the condition of their property. Granted, there are some properties that are over 100 years old in our borough. Preservation of them is somewhat of a challenge. Our business district has also come into disrepair. Several commercial properties are owned by out-of-state companies who choose not to rent them in order to attain a tax write-off, leaving us with many vacant storefronts, as we witnessed yesterday on our tour. These properties are prominent when you first enter the borough. People visiting our town draw the opinion that Parksburg is not a desirable community to live in. Infrastructure blight is another issue that faces our community. Our infrastructure, including state roads, is rapidly deteriorating to the point of collapse. Our main thoroughfare is State Route 372, which is crowned so badly that the center point of the road is almost a foot higher than the sidewalk curb line, which no longer exists because of the deterioration of the sidewalks. This causes numerous vehicle accidents involving parked cars in the business district. Because of this, our sidewalks have crumbled and are a true safety hazard. Would not be a day goes by in front of my business that somebody doesn't trip. It would be a total waste of time and money to replace the sidewalks until the road is regraded. PennDOT has been made aware of this on numerous occasions, but to no avail. The state has recently put into place a gas tax, which is supposed to address road issues. Currently, State Route 10, which runs through the borough, is being repaved, while Route 372, which is not being repaved. Route 372 should also be repaired and repaved and widened, as it handles a large volume of truck traffic going to the industries west of Parksburg. Many visitors also travel this route as they go to the new Victory Brewing Company in nearby West Salisbury Township. This facility could be the catalyst to resurrect a good business climate in Parksburg. Another issue is the replacement of the West Bridge Street Bridge. This has been in limbo for close to 20 years and only recently has gone into a design stage. The loss of this bridge has cost the borough a grocery store and several smaller shops in the West End. The loss of this bridge also limits the accessibility of emergency vehicles into the western part of Parksburg. Towns the size of Parksburg were once attractive to families as they provided the means to survive with a mercantile climate that provided food and clothing at affordable prices from local merchants. With the invasion of the shopping malls and big box stores, the local merchant has pretty much gone by the wayside. Their stores now boarded up and left to deteriorate. There's currently an effort in the borough of Parksburg to create revitalization in both our business and residential districts. This effort is being led by the Borough Council, along with a consultant and a committee comprised of business and professional leaders. We know that we have a challenging mission, but it is our desire to see it through to its implementation. Thank you.
Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representatives, my name is James Thomas, and I presently serve Parksburg Borough as their borough manager. Parksburg Borough is about 1.9 miles square with a population of 3,593 persons. Our housing units consist of 883 owner-occupied homes with 575 rental units. At present, a total of 149 housing units are vacant. Now, this consists both of the single-family units as well as rental units. In 2007, with the downturn of the economy beginning and causing job losses and the ballooning mortgage rates on the rise, foreclosures and sheriff sales became frequent. Many individuals learning of foreclosures and sheriff sales just walked away from their properties before any actual court action could take place. Many who abandoned their properties felt no longer responsible or because of the bills and/or monies owed did not want to be found. In most cases, the actual foreclosures of the properties could take 2 or 3 years to pass through our court systems before the mortgagee could take possession. Homes listed for sale through real estate agencies also needed to be maintained if the owner would not. Property maintenance of abandoned properties were being done by borough employees with the cost entered against that property as a municipal lien until the person responsible could be located. In 2012, Borough Ordinance 505 was signed into law by the borough. This ordinance required a mortgagee, prior to issuance of a notice of default by the mortgagor, inspect the property that is secured by the mortgage. Upon completion of the inspection, the mortgagee has 10 days to register the property with the borough, whether or not it is occupied or vacant. If the property is found to be occupied but remains in default, the mortgagee shall inspect the property promptly, monthly, until the default is satisfied or the property is found to be vacant. Within 10 days of finding the property vacant, the mortgagee must notify the borough and update the status of the property. The mortgagee then becomes responsible for the maintenance to the property as well as maintaining security to that property. The downfall of the economy also required many individuals to place their homes up for sale because of a variety of reasons. This opened the door for investors to purchase property at a low cost and convert owner-occupied homes into rental units. Parksburg rental properties, which increased dramatically in numbers, also became serious problems to many neighborhoods, with an increase in property maintenance issues, increased infestation of insects and vermin, and an increase in crime. An outdated rental inspection ordinance was replaced with a more restrictive property maintenance and rental space requirement, ordinance number 492 in 2011. A 5-year inspection program was replaced with a rental unit inspection requiring an inspection every 2 years or with change of tenant. Absentee owners living outside a 25-mile radius of Parksburg were required to have a property manager or agent who resides within that 25-mile radius and responsible for the property. Each rental unit is inspected separately and is issued a rental permit or an occupancy permit and valid for a 2-year period or change of tenant. All common areas where the rental unit is located, both inside and out, must comply with the International Property Maintenance Code. Any failures to comply with the Property Maintenance Code within a specified time given would result in the withdrawal of the rental permits and eviction of tenants. A section was also added to our ordinance regarding 3 police actions at the same rental unit within a year. This would result in the eviction of the occupants. One problem area discovered was when violations of the ordinance require a loss of permits or eviction of tenants is the time it takes between the filing of documents and the court system to actually evict a tenant. So in an effort to control blight and return business to our borough, the borough has rewritten the subdivision land development ordinance in 2014, rewritten the zoning ordinance in 2015. We have hired a full-time property maintenance and rental inspector this year, and we've done away with contracted employees. Currently, the borough is in the process of formulating a new revitalization plan with the help of a professional planner. And the borough is also in the final stages of replacement of the vehicle and pedestrian bridge over Amtrak. Now, this bridge carries pedestrians as well as vehicle traffic. And the addition of high-level platforms and parking upgrades to our railroad station, of which we have quite a ridership, and there are 9 stops a day in the borough of Parksburg going east and 9 stops a day going west on the Keystone Line. They are presently installing turnarounds for SEPTA in the Ackland area, and I've been told that that turnaround's already installed. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, and all the representatives, I submit that as my report on the Borough of Parksburg.
Representative Corbin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank both of you for the tour through Parksburg yesterday. It's an area I drive through quite often, but when you see it from a vehicle and you see it when you're out walking on the sidewalk, it gives you a whole new perspective, especially the part you mentioned, Jack, about the level of the street being a foot higher than the sidewalks. Your comment, Jack, about Route 372, is there any plan for improvement of 372, either on the 12-year plan or as DVRPC or the County Planning Commission looked at it?
We've had PennDOT in town numerous times when the stream that runs under 372 goes back to the 1920s, collapses, and they come in, they fill the hole up, and that's about the extent of it. The solution to the problem on 372 is the fact that there's a railroad track in the middle of the road. It's a trolley line that used to run from Coatesville to Ackland. And the rails are still there, and they have heaved the road up, and that has caused the crown. And the only way to solve it is, and it's primarily in the business district, is to come in and tear the road up, pull the tracks out, regrade the road, put a new road in, and then replace the sidewalks.
Who owns the rails?
Whoever owned the trolley company, they just abandoned, the trolley line was abandoned, and they were just left to stay.
Okay. Thank you.
Christine Goldbeck has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding the ordinances, which you know fascinate me, did you get pushback from bankers or landlords as you started to enact these and indeed put them in play?
Not at all. Education was the main thing. Once the ordinance was explained, and I explained it to one bank in Lancaster and one bank and another bank yesterday, 2 banks, that what was required of the ordinance, we did not get much pushback. Other than the one bank said, well, we just may walk away from it too. I said, well, before you do, please put me in touch with your legal department, and we'll get you to sign that over to us before you walk away. Well, then things kind of changed, and they were in compliance with what we needed to get done.
And generally, compliance is successful? You get a lot of compliance with it?
We have so far been able to get almost 100% compliance with the lending institutions. We stay on them constantly, of course, to make sure that compliance is maintained. But yes, we've had good success with it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Certainly.
I have a couple questions for you on those. You mentioned the bridge project had been stalled for a long time, And then you also mentioned, well, I saw yesterday the road. I get what you're talking about. It is a real problem. Let's start with the road. I assume the road issue is not a normal PennDOT's maintenance. It requires some sort of design of a big project by its size.
If I can speak to that.
Yeah, sure.
The PennDOT's feeling on the road issue is anything below the surface of the road belongs to the municipality. This is true with stormwater inlets, with almost anything that's done. Route 10 is being repaved from Cochranville to Route 30 and in the process of milling now. In the inspection before the milling, I had to replace 2 stormwater inlets on Route 10 prior to their milling. So, yeah, the PennDOT says we own the road and all the air above it. Rest of it's yours.
Which of course places a tremendous burden on you. How are you going to ever foot that cost? On the bridge project, is that on the county tip?
It's number 1 on the county tip.
It just took that long?
It took that long. We're in the final stages now of final design. We just now signed another extension on a contract with our engineers in Philadelphia, Parsons Brinkerhoff. So we are still working on that. Of course, it's a long, drawn-out process, unfortunately, and it just takes a tremendous amount of time.
Any other questions? Yep. Representative Knowles?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is more of a, the more involved and the more I hear about the problems that we're dealing with Blight, the more important I realize it is that somehow or other communities need to share information, and I'm not sure that's happening with a lot of situations. I'll give you an example. A little community in the district that I represent. So Joe Schmo, an absentee landlord, owns a home. The house burns down. So Joe decides that he's going to take the insurance dollars and he's going to go to Vegas and have a hell of a good time. Well, in the meantime, when he walks away from that house, he stops paying taxes. He simply walks away. The neighbors then have to deal with the burned out property. The grass grows, nobody shovels the snow. The bank doesn't want it. They don't want it because it's just not worth enough to them. They try to do a judicial sale and nobody wants it even for a few $100s. What one of the communities that I represent did is they passed an ordinance that allows the borough to hold insurance money to ensure that that property is taken care of, to be sure that that property is demolished. Now, some would say it's illegal. I don't know whether it is or it isn't, but guess what? They're doing it and it's working.
Yeah.
They're doing it and it's working because they were just so frustrated. They were so frustrated with having to deal with absentee landlords where I live. They're everywhere. And this has really held people accountable in terms of their property. So just another, just another bit of information that I think is good to share. And I'll let you know if they catch up with them.
Representative, there's a copy of that ordinance on my desk for my approval, and we're talking with our solicitor now about implementation of that ordinance. So, yes, it is a workable tool.
Representative Knowles, would you like to share the name of the community that has that ordinance?
That would be the Tamaqua Borough.
There we go.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other questions, I think we're going to hear from the Airport Board Authority.
Thank you.
My borough council would like me to express their thanks for your interest in our borough and the communities.
It's a beautiful borough.
Thank you.
We enjoyed taking you through it.
Are we switching the agenda around?
We are? Well, who do we have next? I'm sorry. Okay. Mr. Plogger, would you mind switching? The Airport Authority apparently has to rush out. My apologies. I know everybody's You guys can wrestle over it.
Restaurant, perhaps the next flight to South, maybe we can. It's up there. We'll definitely barter a little bit there.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. Very kind of you.
There was a beautiful jet on the runway with a 4:30 flight going somewhere. I was tempted to jump on board.
Well, after a 2.5-hour stress test this morning, I thank you for the opportunity to continue it. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee. Thank you for allowing the Airport Authority to speak to you today on our expansion efforts. This is going to be somewhat informational, but it's also connected to Blight. Okay. So some may ask why an airport's expansion project is part of a hearing on Blight, but as already been mentioned, revitalization is a positive response to Blight. When an airport is situated near manufacturing companies or corporate offices, it is a benefit to those companies. Oftentimes, industries choose to relocate to open offices or manufacturing operations close to an airport, such as Chester County Airport, because they're able to easily get their products and their key personnel where they need to be. Chester County Airport is situated in Valley Township, along Route 30, just west of Coatesville. The airport serves the greater Chester County businesses, such as QVC, Vanguard, and for that matter, 115 corporations in and around Chester County use that airport annually. And these are dedicated flights through NetJets and ExecJets to destinations around the U.S. There are currently 19 corporate hangars and 60 individual T hangars on the field. The public is welcome at the terminal building, where Signature Aviation, the fixed base operation, and the Flying Machine Cafe reside. Adjacent to the airport is Sikorsky's Coatesville facilities, which manufactures the $20 million S-92 helicopter and a smaller version. Sikorsky actually requires access to the airport for their flight testing prior to sale and turnover of the aircraft. To accomplish that, they do a through-the-fence operation, and I'll talk about that shortly. The airport is overseen by the authority, composed of a 7-member board appointed by the county commissioners to serve a 5-year term. The board is supported by an airport manager, Gary Hudson, a solicitor, by an accountant, by an airport engineer, Delta Consulting Engineers, and a secretary. And annually, the airport books are audited for incorporation into the county, into its county audit in the June time period. Recently, the authority, which I represent, submitted 2 multimodal proposals for transportation improvements, one to DCED and the other to PennDOT. These proposals, as we see it, are critical to the initiation of our long-range plan to make Chester County Airport a safer and more user-friendly environment for air travel. The proposed land development plans include a control tower, West End corporate hangars, expansion of the terminal building, and other improvements on the field. The airport submitted an application to the FAA for a contract tower. The airport has 50,000 operations annually, consisting of mixed of jet service, helicopter flights, and smaller propeller aircraft. There are more corporate flights into and out of this airport than Reading and Lancaster put together. This is a significant airport to Chester County. The sheer complexity of these operations, as well as the volume, mandate tower operations. Right now, planes talk to one another using Unicom, which is an antiquated system, 122.7. It requires you to be within, let's say, 5 miles of the airport so you don't have interference from other airports that use the same frequency. So it's very important that this be updated and we improve our opportunities to enhance safety. The fact that Sikorsky is outside the airport fence means that they must truck or hover taxi from their heliplex to the airport, which impacts local traffic and reduces efficiency. They have to shut down Washington Lane in order to get this over and across. The control tower is a solution. As Sikorsky sees it, that is a solution to them. They can actually fly under control right into our airspace, right from the heliplex. At issue, however, is the FAA review process, which is changing the evaluation criteria and has placed a moratorium on decisions despite safety concerns. So we have written to our senators and representatives who can hopefully influence FAA in getting that decision made in a more expeditious fashion. The airport is currently out of space to house additional corporate jets, which limits growth and rental income to the authority. For this reason, the authority has targeted additional hangar construction at the west end of the field. The plan is to develop the land for an additional 11 large or 22 smaller corporate hangars. The need is based on monthly inquiries received by our airport manager from corporate representatives seeking space. Finally, the terminal building expansion plan is based on a preliminary design by Bernard and Associates. This incorporates an additional 6,000 square feet of FBO, fixed base operation, and public space to better serve these needs. With that comes additional parking and better access to the terminal. We see this as Chester County. And this terminal building needs to be welcoming and professional in its appearance, consistent with the planned growth of this airport. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Yes, Representative Corbin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think he's a little surprised. I came in here this morning saying, I can't think of any questions to ask, and they just keep popping up. You mentioned Washington Lane with regards to Sikorsky. What happened to the plan, and correct me if I'm wrong, to build a roadway, almost a tunnel, to put Washington Lane under a tunnel so that there would be no interruption from Sikorsky over to the airport? Was that plan abandoned?
For all practical reasons, I'd say yes. It has, discussions were had at Chester County Economic Development Council with all parties, including Salisbury. It was Salisbury's engineer who suggested the tunnel. Sikorsky no longer sees this as an appropriate solution. That's the answer.
Representative Knowles.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just curious, how many runways?
There's only one runway, and it goes basically east-west.
And what's the length of the runway?
5,500 feet. I mean, eventually there are long range, and when I say long range, over my, I won't be around, that sort of thing, to provide a 6,100-foot runway, which would provide additional safety space for that jet service. So right now, jets are kind of limited to full fuel and some and part passengers, or full passengers and lesser amounts of fuel in order to ensure the safety on takeoff.
Minimum length for a jet to land is, not a commercial jet, but a jet is somewhere around 5,000, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just, and they were, well, I'm glad to know that because I had a discussion with one of our airport guys about that. Economic development directors, people who work in that field, have told me when I was the county commissioner that we had a big go-around about our county airport. Mm-hmm. And my question to him was, where does an airport rank in terms of importance for a business to locate? Mm-hmm. And I had two different answers. Mm-hmm. The one guy said to me, well, first, location in terms of access mm-hmm. to interstate highways, to hit the highways. The second, availability of a good workforce. He said, airport in terms of, maybe it ranks in the top 5. And I just would like to hear your reaction to that statement.
I can only make the comment that I see relative to Chester County Airport itself. I know for a fact that there has been studies by AOPA, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, regarding the economic impact of an airport. And it's basically comes down to a 3-to-1 impact to the surrounding community. So whatever investment goes on in that airport, there's a threefold return to the surrounding community. That's of value. The attraction, as I see it, of this airport is that right now we have 115 corporations that are using that field now. Eventually, people, we don't want this to be an old boys field. You know what I mean? We want this to be a professional field and a safe field. We want to give it the proper air that it should have. And by doing that, we will begin to attract more corporate impact right in that area. Right now, we have 19 corporations. 19 corporations have jets on that field. And they'll find at some point that they'll want to perhaps move some of their operations a little closer. We'll have to see.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, you actually answered the question I was interested in, and that was the economic impact of an airport, so thank you for that. And the sense I got from yesterday's tour was that the airport fit in perfectly with the other two projects because we were talking about transportation corridors. And in the end, you're trying to move employees from one place to another where they can earn a good wage. And what I'm hearing out of this project is that the rail line provides opportunities for young people to relocate to small towns where they want to be and still get to workplaces. Obviously, an airport has that benefit. The other side of it, of course, is I know for a fact that aircraft mechanics are hard to find, and the starting salary is about $60,000. So that's a good paying job. Next panel, and I must have.
Harry has a question.
Oh, I'm sorry, Harry.
That's okay, Mr.
Representative.
Chairman. Thank you. I just had one question, and would you voice briefly the significance of the Chester County Airport in comparison to the usage at the Philadelphia International Airport? How significant is this location?
Well, clearly, these 115 corporations I mentioned are in and around the Chester County Airport. They're carrying to come to our airport to fly from there, as opposed to going to Philadelphia, slogging through all the traffic, waiting in line through TSA. When they arrive at our airport, that plane is ready to go. It's ready to go when they're at the airport. So the efficiency is one of the prime benefits that these corporations see. 115 of them right there. So we will also attract planes that are housed presently in Northeast Philadelphia. So we'll be stealing some of their hangars, or jets rather, and coming to Chester County because of proximity again. It's better for the corporation. So this will be opportunities for us to grow.
Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Steve Plogger, President and CEO of Main Street Association. My apologies to you that we're running behind. I hope we're not creating any problems back home.
No, we're fine, thank you. I guess we're afternoon now. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Committee, Urban Affairs Committee. Thanks very much for entertaining us. Enjoyed your visit yesterday to Downingtown. Didn't know it was going to be a home game for the chairman. So we're like, woohoo, okay, that's a win for us. So thank you for that, and so appreciate that. So let me just get to my report here. On behalf of the Downingtown Main Street Association, I want to thank the Urban Affairs Committee for visiting our borough and touring our most blighted property, the old Sunoco paper mill on Route 322. Borough and state officials have been working hard and are close to bringing in new development, including a new train station. Downingtown Main Street Association is an economic development arm of the Borough of Downingtown. We are a 501c3 corporation comprised of citizens, property owners, and businesses who share a common interest in the Borough of Downingtown's growth and economic development. Established in 1993, Downingtown Main Street Association's mission is to take a lead role in revitalization efforts in the Main Street District in order to develop and enhance economic opportunities in the borough. Our organization spearheads streetscape beautification projects, building rehabs, and community-based events in order to increase property values, decrease commercial vacancy rates, and to bring vitality and vigor to the borough while preserving history that make Downingtown a special place to work and live. Downingtown Main Street Association is a member of the Pennsylvania Downtown Center and National Main Street Center. We follow National Main Street's guiding framework, four-point approach, with established committees consisting of organization, promotion, design, and economic vitality. Downingtown Main Street is governed by an elected board of directors who hire a president CEO to manage daily operations. We are funded by a public partnership with a contribution from the Borough of Downingtown and donations from the business community. The borough is fortunate not to be overwhelmed by urban blight. However, there are properties in our business district that have been neglected for years. Our organization, along with borough officials and code enforcement, partner to address these conditions. Owners are notified of property maintenance violations, given a time period to comply, and for those who don't comply, fines are issued. Our organization has been successful with a state grant used for facade improvement at the center of town. Paint and other supplies were provided, and our board of directors did the volunteer labor. The property owner then became motivated and paid to put on a new roof. Following this project, a nearby business painted the front of their building. A new facade improvement program for 2016 should keep this ball rolling. We have a $108,000 Greenways, Trails, and Recreation Program, GTRP state grant pending approval at the GFA's next meeting, whenever that may come. We've been waiting. And this is for the Armor Alley Pocket Plaza located in our business district. If approved, the funds will be used to restore the plaza with new pavers, benches, plantings, general lighting, painting, an overhead canopy of lighting, and a mid-block pedestrian crosswalk, along with the signage. The restored plaza will be a great asset to bring shoppers to our downtown and provide a site for community events and outdoor concerts. We are grateful to our state leaders, Representative Lewis and Senator Andy D., for their tireless efforts in support of this project. Downingtown Main Street Association recently completed a 16th-month parking management project, which brought new state-of-the-art kiosk pay stations to municipal parking lots in the borough at a $115,000 investment in parking improvements. One of our most rewarding accomplishments was to lead recovery and relocation efforts to 11 businesses displaced by a devastating fire last May. Downingtown Main Street Association coordinated a town meeting with impacted businesses, and we brought in resources, lenders, realtors, state, county, and local officials to assist with getting these businesses back open and remaining in the borough. Downingtown Main Street Association received local and regional recognition for our recovery efforts and have provided training to other municipalities. And signature Downingtown Main Street events that bring thousands of people to Downingtown are We Love Downingtown Valentine's Day Heart campaigns, where we go into the business district and we sell hearts, and they put their name. We put them on one of our central businesses as a large storefront showroom, and that's a fundraiser. Also instills pride in our community. We have the Downtown Fine Arts Festival, which is coming up later this month. Downtown Summer Jam, which is the last Friday in June, July, and August. We have food vendors, bands, craft vendors, brings a ton of people out. And then in the fall, we have a zombie run and a Halloween parade. And again, they're all these they're kind of part of the tool that bring economic development, bringing people into our community. And in closing, I would like to thank the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, Urban Affairs Committee, for visiting our community and inviting Downtown Main Street Association to speak about urban blight in our downtown. We are proud to share our challenges and success stories. I'll be happy to ask any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Would you, I'd be interested in your comments of how you rank the importance of the new train station, its location, and dealing with, the issue, and maybe just talk a little bit about the stumbling blocks you think that exist to get it done.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. The train station moved just, a few hundred feet down the tracks, but to the area of 322 and Boot Road, where the committee visited yesterday. Those of you who were not there, it's in the borough. Representative Corbin is well aware of it, having represented the borough for many years. It's an ongoing project, probably about 4 or 5 years in the works. Our goal is to move the train station to this new area and also to bring in development. Been delays over the year. The original developer was not able to follow through, ran into financial difficulties. We also had the 2008 recession. The property now is in bank foreclosure with several different property owners, the paper mills, Sunoco Paper Mills, the former owner. They own some of the parcels, and the bank now controls some of the other. We have a new developer that is willing to come in and wants to buy the property, has actually begun the process, and would like to put in a mixed-use development along with parking for the train commuters. Our organization and borough officials were up in Harrisburg 2 weeks ago. We met with the state transportation secretary and her high-level staff, along with the developers, to show that we would like to develop this in an economic development fashion to bring in high-value apartments, along with the mixed use and train parking. That's our preference. That would enhance our downtown. We find that the younger people, the young professionals, if they can have a residence near their train station, they can walk to the train. They come home, they can walk to our downtown, they can dine at our restaurants, dine at our shops. So the importance of a mixed-use development is critical to as part of our Main Street mission to develop our downtown, as opposed to the PennDOT perhaps wanting to build a sea of asphalt and just put in a parking. That is not something we want to see. We've made it clear to PennDOT, and we believe that the governor is in favor of economic development too. So by the mixed-use development with parking provided, thinking out of the box, as was mentioned earlier, we feel would be a win-win for us and as well as PennDOT for the train station development.
Representative Knowles?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I commend you for what you are doing, because I think we all realize the downtowns in our small communities in terms of how they struggle. It seems to me that a downtown that is going to survive or that is going to prosper has to have a niche. It has to have a niche. By that I mean, it's not located in my district, but the borough of Jim Thorpe in Carbon County. And that was, at one time, was a dying community because of the architecture, because of some of the historic buildings, because of their closeness to the Lehigh River. It runs right through their community. Because of their rail excursions, it has become a very popular tourist promotion place in Carbon County. I guess I'd like you to talk a little bit more about your niche. What is your niche? What separates you from the other communities? I know you talked a little bit about it, but if you could just expound a little bit.
Yes, thank you. What we found over the years doing surveys, modern technology with Survey Monkey, those type of things, where we survey our general population. What do they want to see? Why would they come to our downtown? Why would they come to events? And it seems to be, shopping and dining are key. Events, food, beer is important. So with that in mind, our Borough Council has been very proactive, very pro-business over the years. We have an excellent borough manager as well. So they have gone out of their way to bring in new business, to be creative. We have a Keystone Opportunity Zone. We have different programs for tax incentive. So we have done it, but I think our niche is that people want to come to dine, they want to come to shop, and we were able to open a couple of new restaurants. One opened and closed, and we have a new owner, so we think that's coming back. But our feelings and experiences that people are kind of tired of the mall thing, and they want to come downtown, they want to be able to walk around. A couple of different shops. We have an excellent park system. We have a safe community. We have a quality police department. So it seems like the niche that we have found that we're hearing is that they want to come out, they want to be able to dine, and if there are multiple places, that's a good thing because they may visit one night and one the other. So the competition would not necessarily drive similar business out. It would bring in new business.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
And just to share with your representative, I have the benefit of 36 years of experience in that when we moved here in 1975, and for people in the audience, they'll say that it might be hard to believe, you had to go to Paoli in order to get a train to go into Philadelphia. That was where the train stopped. And it took a couple years before it came to Downingtown and then into Thorndale. And that was a big thing for commuters. So one of the other attractions, of course, is if you don't want to take the Schuylkill, which nobody really wants to, or you don't want to take 95 to get into town, the train is the way. So I could see this as being a very attractive for young people to move back into the borough, raise their families, great school system, fantastic school system, and be able to commute for their job into Philadelphia relatively easy. The other thing we see, and we know it because of Uber, young people don't want to drive at night. They're getting smarter about the DUI laws and all. They want to go out, have a social event. They take Uber and leave the car behind. Representative Corbin, I think you had a question.
I did. Thank you, Steve. I heard yesterday something about parking spaces for the train station being numbered at 1,000 parking spaces. And is that something that PennDOT's requiring? Is it something that could be built? Does it have to be built all at once, so you have 1,000 spaces, or could it be something where you build maybe 500 and then add to as necessary or as needed? And a follow-up to that is the chairman had mentioned about adding stops for SEPTA with Downingtown and Thorndale. Would there be any additional Keystone line stops that would be done with the new train station? There are times I want to go to Harrisburg a little bit earlier than what Downingtown has to offer, and there's no train available unless you go to Exton, and you can't park the car in Exton because all the spaces are filled up. So a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'll address them. So as the first question as far as how many parking spaces would they need? Would PennDOT want to have with the train station? And that's where we're kind of at now with the developer. The developer is the Hankin Group. So the Hankin Group has provided a plan which would provide maybe close to 400 parking spaces on the east side, nearest to tracks, and then with a reserve parking or expansion parking available on the west side, further down into the East Callan part of the development. So as far as the number that's required, it's kind of up in the air now. It depends. I mean, the borough had talked about what about a parking garage, going up. that would provide close by parking without having a sea of asphalt. But, of course, that, it's a huge expense for a parking garage. So we said, well, what about if we, just did the smaller surface and had the ability to perhaps address a parking garage down the road. So those are things that are on the table, and that was a presentation to PennDOT that would they, the Hankin Group would like them to consider their plan to allow the parking as they laid out. So I believe that is something that's open to talks, and that's the way we left it, the Borough and the Hankin Group and PennDOT, that we were going to talk. Hankin Group was going to submit further plans for the development to see if it is feasible and if it could be a win-win. I think PennDOT's original plans were just to put, parking lot all up against the tracks where we showed you yesterday, and that just doesn't meet our needs for economic development. We need to have a mixed-use plan there and still allow plenty of parking for the commuters. And the other question, as far as additional stops, I'm not aware that we've had any type of discussions about that. Perhaps maybe when final plans are made, that maybe SEPTA would be able to judge based on the demand and the availability of parking if they could do that. We're thinking that this new location would be a better draw commuters from Westchester, West Bradford, that whole area, because now if you're going to, you got to come up 322, go through the tunnel, traffic backs up all the way to Business Route 30. With this new train station, you're coming up right to 322. You're just barely touching the entrance to the borough, and so it's going to be much easier in and out. So we think the ridership will increase as well. So for the general downtown area and beyond, this could really be a great area.
Our next panel will be Unruh, Turner, Burke, and Fries, Kimberly Venezzi, attorney at law. Go ahead. We're anxious to hear from you.
Thank you very much. As the chairman stated, my name is Kim Benzie. I'm with the law firm of Unruh, Turner, Burke, and Fries. We're based out of Westchester. Just to give you a little background about me, I've been in Chester County for 4 decades, so this is definitely my hometown, and I live in West Bradford. West Bradford Township is located essentially between Downtown Borough and the city of Coatesville. My kids will eventually go to Downtown West, which we're excited about, and I used to walk across cornfields to get to the Exton Mall, back when I lived in Exton. So our firm essentially does, the department on our firm does all municipal work. So we represent many municipalities across Chester County. Currently, I'm solicitor to West Callan Township, which is right nearby, and also a solicitor to Honeybrook Borough and also to Avondale Borough. But we also represent various other townships and boroughs across Chester County. So I was asked to speak a little bit about the borough of Phoenixville, which has really benefited from the Blight Act. My role as a municipal solicitor is that I see myself as the ground forces. So we have these great acts and statutes that we were hoping will help our townships and our boroughs. And then what I do is I try to actually take those acts and empower my zoning officer or my borough manager or my township manager to actually make that work for his township or his borough. In the borough of Phoenixville especially, there was a couple comments that were made today that I kind of clung on to a little bit. There were things like, what's your niche? If the borough has a niche, that's helpful, or thinking outside the box. And those are 2 things the borough of Phoenixville did really well. Our firm was solicitor to the borough of Phoenixville for about a period of 10 years. We no longer are. There were some political shifts. But while we were there, we were really successful. We had a zoning ordinance in the borough of Phoenixville that literally was this big, a huge document. I mean, you had to open it up, and developers would come in and they wouldn't even know where to start with those many provisions in that borough. So we worked with a land planner and myself, and we took a borough ordinance that was this big, and currently it's about this big. So, and I've been told in the state of Pennsylvania, there's not a zoning ordinance like it for any borough or any township, because it's that thin, but it's also very effective. Now that I'm not solicitor for the borough of Phoenixville, I'll have a developer come to me and say, I'm looking at the zoning ordinance, and it seems like I can do pretty much anything I want with this piece. And I said, well, that's fairly accurate, but there are certain controls. But the borough of Phoenixville really wanted to give the developer the ability to think outside the box. So that's been very helpful in the borough of Phoenixville. If you've been up there, you've seen how it's changed and adapted. But one of the things that they've utilized very well in the borough of Phoenixville is the Blight Act. The Blight Act has been a huge help in the borough of Phoenixville. And what we did with that, we knew about the Blight Act, so what we did, we knew it was this great empowerment tool coming down from on high. But what happened is we took that act and we actually put it into the ordinance. A lot of times I think what happens is there's these acts or these statutes that are out there and municipalities don't even know that they can use those. So we took that ordinance and with that act and we put it into the actual code book so that the zoning officers and the borough manager knew that was a tool they could use in the borough. And in the borough, it was I guess I wanted to explain to you a couple of reasons it was really helpful in the borough and why it's helpful in the townships, and then why it's helpful and how it could be more helpful to us. In the borough of Phoenixville, it was helpful. We had some large projects come in. So we have a developer comes in with a lot of money doing a huge project in the borough. Well, what happened is that developer would get behind on water or sewer or permit fees. And we wanted to encourage that developer, but we would be able to say to him, look, you're really behind on these fees. We've got this Blight Act, and we can enforce this. So although his building's not a blighted building, and it's actually a great building, he would say, all right, I really need to get up to speed. So he would pay those fees. And when you let a developer get that behind on those permitting fees, the water, the sewer fees, it starts to affect your budget in a borough. So we used the Blight Act to help us with those larger developers. Small projects, we'll have a couple of developers in a borough that has a small house, and maybe he's let that house go to shambles, or it's a lot of apartments in the house, and then he would come to us and ask for a permit for another property. Well, of course, the Blight Act was very useful in that way, because we would say, well, we can't give you a permit for that property because you've got another property you've got to fix up first. So that's a very easy way to use that tool. But also what happened is we'd have a developer or a real estate owner that would have maybe 10 pieces of property in the borough. And he would want to sell one of the pieces, but we'd have liens in place on all his properties. So then he would try to sell this one piece, and the property owner who was going to buy the piece from him would say, you've got all these liens, what am I going to do? Well, we would actually be able to negotiate and settle up with those liens on that property to get that property in the hands of a property owner who's actually going to do something with that property. So, we could take a hard line and say, nope, you've got to clean up all your liens and all your properties before we start letting you transfer properties. But the borough was smart enough, and they would negotiate and say, we're going to work with that property owner so we can get that property in the hands of somebody who's actually going to do some good with that property. So the Blight Act's been very useful in that way. And I just think in general, the Blight Act's just a good negotiating tool to be able to tell a developer that we have this Blight Act. You can't get these permits until you settle up with the borough or the township. So it's been helpful in that way. It's also, we represent boroughs, but it represents some townships. And the Blight Act, it doesn't just help boroughs or cities. It also helps townships. We have lots of properties in townships where property owners aren't paying their sewer, water fees. There's some townships in Chester County that, when you drive through them, look very wealthy and have spectacular homes. You would be surprised at the number of people who are not paying their sewer, water, and taxes in Chester County. Well, that impacts the municipality. It impacts their budget. So what we do is we'll file liens against those properties. Now, one of the challenges that the Blight Act has not helped us with is when we file the liens, we know eventually if that property sells to a new property owner, they'll have to settle up those liens. But a lot of times, those liens will sit on a property for 10 years. And unless a municipality wants to move forward in some kind of sheriff's sale, that type of action, they really can't do much with that money or how to collect it. One of the frustrating parts of that has been if a bank forecloses upon a property, because we'll have liens in place against a property, the bank forecloses, but not all banks will settle up with the municipality. You have to be very persistent. So I have had luck with certain banks. When I find out they've gotten a property, I'll hunt down, and you have to be very persistent and finally get through to the right person at the bank, and they'll say, fine, we'll settle up with the township or the borough, and we'll pay off those liens so the property's clear of those liens. But that's one of the frustrating things about the act, is you can get those liens in place, but then they sit there until the property changes hands. The Blight Act does have a provision in it that talks about you can attach to the property owners the assets, what assets they have. But I haven't seen anyone really using that in Chester County as far as us municipal lawyers that I'm aware of. So it seems like it's going to be a useful tool, but according to the act, you actually have to get a judgment in the Court of Common Pleas before you can actually attach to assets. And that's a process, and it's a costly process. So I think the Blight Act has mostly been useful as far as denying permits or getting liens in place, but I haven't seen it used as far as attaching to assets. One of the helpful things in the Blight Act, if there would be some way that we can have the banks actually settle up on those liens as part of that act, would really be helpful, because there are a lot of foreclosures and a lot of banks just sit on those liens until they transfer it to a new property owner. So I think I had actually a whole written information that I provided to you, but I figured after I heard everybody testify, I would just testify about what would be of interest.
Any questions from members? I know staff has questions. Go ahead, Representative Corbin.
Thank you, Kim. As you know, Coatesville is part of my district. I'm curious, was Franklin Commons one of the developments that was related to the Blight Act or anything in that on the north side? It's been a tremendous success story, and just, to follow up what you said about Phoenixville, I mean, the borough it's just a model for what can happen to an old steel town when it's run down, and what can happen when people pay attention to it and do good there. It's really a wonderful place.
I don't think that it was the Blight Act was pulled into that, but certainly the zoning ordinance was much more welcoming to Franklin Commons, which is a multi-use tenant building that the new zoning ordinance encouraged that kind of development in that area, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you very much. As one of the staffers on the bicameral bipartisan Blight Task Force, I was one of the authors of Senate Bill 900, which became the Blight Act.
Thank you.
I can tell you, no, thank you. I can tell you that it was much more stringent, but through negotiations with stakeholders, you have what you have at this point.
Okay.
We have talked about going back in and doing some changes as a result of people like you who come out and tell us this is what we really need, this is what we'd like to see. Naturally, we can't promise you that the votes are there to do it due to stakeholders, but if you would please suggest some language to me, since you seem to have expert writing abilities with zoning codes as well, which I'll be picking your brain about, I would be thrilled, and I will send you an email so we can initiate contact, and I will take it before the members of the bicameral bipartisan Blight Task Force.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes. So any suggested language or
Okay.
changes for us to consider, I would be thrilled. And thank you for talking about it and its use. We're always curious to see the statutes that we put in place, and for people locally to talk about them, because we can, these ladies and gentlemen can make all the laws in the world at the state level, but if they're not being used by all of you at the local level, it's kind of fruitless. So
Yeah.
thanks for using it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, going to recognize Representative Lewis for closing comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank you to Kimberly. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a move that is beneficial to our communities. We hope to continue the dialogue. We hope to maintain a contact with all of you and all of the stakeholders involved, so we can do our part to continue this process. This is a part of the total process, and your connection with us is most important. I've heard the word tools early. We're trying to get all of these tools together, and my analogy just comparing it to a brand-new auto mechanic, and he's put in this garage with all these tools that does everything to make an automobile synchronize smoothly. This is what we're trying to do, learning what all the tools are so we can move forward and have our communities operate smoothly. Mr. Chairman, I thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to make a couple brief comments. My perception is that generally a Commonwealth is probably the most difficult form of government, right? We rely on local control. We're not a county-based government. There's really no other model left in the United States that operates like us, but it still is the best. It's what people like the most. They want to be able to go see their city council member and talk to her right across the table and say, hey, this is what's going on in my neighborhood. How can you help? The farther up you are in the chain, the harder it is to reach. You know, it's harder to reach your congressman. It's harder to reach your state representatives or state senate or U.S. senators. At the state level, we're still very local and approachable. Some people think we have too many state representatives, but other people think that's okay because they can find their local state representative. I know now exactly where your office is, Representative Lewis. And so in order to be successful then, we have to be communicating and we have to be educating. Today we learned that there are a lot of tools, there are a lot of skill sets that can be used. We learn from other municipalities. We learn that there are certain state statutes that have been recently enacted and could be tried in communities. But most importantly, we heard from you. And we understand that you have a vision. And the vision between the communities seems to me to be pretty common. It's this idea of let's have a transportation hub where you can get from one place to the other and hopefully bring people back into the boroughs and the communities. I think you'll be successful. And I thought, I forget who said it was one of the testifiers, but basically the example they gave was, don't take no for an example. That's right, it was the township representative, the supervisor. He said, I wasn't willing to take no. He didn't put it in those words, but I wasn't going to have the school board stop this program, and just kept being persistent. And that's what we're going to do. The last thing I would share with the local elected officials in the audience, we have started a relationship. We have fantastic staff. Call upon us, use us to provide resources and education back to you about how you may be able to deal with things. And let's be united in our approach. In Bucks County, what we hope to do as state representatives is get together with our senators and work together. I'm sure that's happening in Chester County, but we can always do better in every community. And so let's meet together, let's talk together on our common issues, and because collectively we're very, very strong, individually not so much. So thank you. I'm going to adjourn the hearing, and thank you for your testimony today. This meeting is adjourned.